Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Primavera P6 pilot conference room session. Just to make the distinction, this is not a training session. This is more of a presentation going over some updates in terms of the addition of P6, as well as to do a demonstration highlighting some features and benefits of P6 as well. The next slide, if we can go over the agenda for this afternoon. Basically, we'll have a welcome message. We'll go over some objectives and purpose. We'll have some representative comments from different offices in terms of impacts to their programs and what they do. And then we're going to follow up with the presentation by the Oracle P6 group, highlighting functionality, some features, and some things that will might change somehow we do the business process moving forward. And then we'll follow up with questions and closing remarks. And as we go through this, just feel free to ask questions at that point in time. There's no need to wait to the very end to ask questions. We want this to be more engaging, so feel free to kind of stop us if we need to, so that we can clearly communicate whatever ideas and questions we have. Okay, next slide. So what we have for today, there's a sign-in sheet that if you didn't get a chance to fill it out, you can actually complete it after today's meeting at the end of the session. And then also, just for the sake of courtesy, if you could please silence your phones. The presentation today will be video conference as well as video tapes. So at a later time, we did have some limitations in terms of the people that we can invite to this session. So at a later time, feel free to actually retrieve it, and if you need to review it, you can. And also share it with your staff as well. Again, my name is Bobby Hilliard. I'm the Program Control Administrator. And we are, again, excited to offer this one of several conference room pilots to all of you. Next slide. What I'd like to do now is go over some team introductions. It's important to know, really, Program Control, Office of Program Control, as I call your name, I'd like for you to stand just so that everyone knows who you are. A lot of times you deal with them behind the scenes in terms of emails and maybe phone calls. But first of all, I'd like to ask David Norwood to stand, Marshall Troop, Say Kape, Shante, Krista, Jason. These are the folks that you're actually dealing with when you're dealing with schedules. The next introduction is part of the core team. We have Samir Patel. We have Sue Johnson. And also we have Miss Dorney, Sharon Dorney. Before I move forward, this is impromptu, but I do need to recognize the previous control administrator. She's been instrumental in actually getting us to the point where we are today. And a lot of the policies and procedures of where we are, basically she put in place. And getting everyone to understand master templates, baseline schedules, and trying to educate us over and over again on all these same issues. I do want to recognize Janitha Rice-Singleton for all she's done. And really this was pointed out in terms of the P6 team, in terms of taking on the challenge. We set together a pretty aggressive schedule, and basically knowing how the educational level in terms of where we stood, they felt very comfortable in terms of moving forward based upon how we're working our program where we are today. So I just wanted to acknowledge Janitha for that. Next slide. Going over some objectives for the day. Again, I want to introduce you to the core team, P6 core team. Also we're going to provide you with an overview of some of the functionality and also the key features that P6 has to offer and some of the benefits that we're looking at as we move forward. Also, in terms of program control, we want to reiterate how, as we go through the process of gathering and collecting information, how it's used to make sure that at the end of the day, it's just not that we're asking for information for the sake of it, but we're collecting this data for the sake of project managers, your actual teams, and then once this data is put together, we're running reports, monitoring and tracking things, and then also it's shared with basically the chief engineer, office of planning, financial office, commissioners, so that everyone can make an informed decision about the program. And at certain times, there's decisions that need to be made based upon the information that's in the reports and things like that. We're going to also talk about a timeline, basically where we are today. We've gone over several, we've held several meetings with the core team in terms of training. We have a series of other pilots that we are anticipating. The next one will most likely be in January, followed up by another one in March. And the end date that we're anticipating rolling out is going to be, I think, beginning of May is our true rollout date in terms of when we'll have a live conversion migrated to P6. What to expect? Quite honestly, we're still developing and learning some of the terminologies to find out where we stand with things. One of the things that was obvious that as we went through the training session, we had folks from OFM kind of get together with us, and we started out with a typical kind of a work breakdown structure of the construction work program. But as we went through several exercises, we realized we needed to back up and roll it out in terms of a transportation program, because it's not just projects that we work on. For example, IT has projects that they use that they've used in the past using Microsoft projects. So actually P6 is another opportunity to share the scheduling tool for those other projects outside of basically our roadway projects and things of that nature. This is the same for planning and also things that we can do internally within our office. So in terms of a paradigm, we don't want to limit ourselves in terms of what we think. So what we had to do was basically build and expand that work breakdown structure to include other opportunities to capture and utilize what P6 can actually do. Another one, project management, the panacea. Quite honestly, it's a tool. You're going to hear great things about what it can do, but in the very end, it's only as good as the information that's put into it and the frequency in terms of how we update data. And right now, this is only one tool. You still have your basic tools of communicating, emails, phone calls. This is just another way to enhance how we communicate project scheduling and the management of our program. So there should be no misnomers about this is a cure-all for everything that we do. This is just an enhanced feature of moving forward. Another item is why P6. This one is a little more delicate because comparing it to other programs, this has a proven history of dealing with a large number of projects on a wide scale. And then again, the features that it has to offer. Also, it has a capability expanding towards construction as well. So these are things that we are leaving ourselves open to for the future. So we're not shorting ourselves short in terms of what we can do moving forward. And finally, what we're looking to do is, as you hear and see this information, really we need your feedback. So we really didn't want to approach moving forward without your input in terms of what you thought about, what your jobs require. So we really need your feedback in terms of, as we move forward, what works, what is most productive for you in terms of time-wise. And with that, we'd like to move to the next slide. Now what I'd like to do is, again, this is the overall time schedule for this. Samir, I'm not sure if you would like to say anything on this here.
No, it's just excuse me. Thanks, Bobby. So this is the high-level timeline that we've put forward right now for the implementation and the different stages. You can see that some of those milestones have been completed, and we're well on our way. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but that's the overall plan, and we'll continue communicating that out to you as we make progress. Okay. Any questions at this time? All right. Next slide. Okay, so with this, I'd like to turn it over to David Norwood. And David, if you can come and talk to impacts program control. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, good afternoon. Really, there's not a whole lot of impacts to program control at the States, but I just wanted to let you know how we're going to help you in this once we implement this new software. We'll still be the subject matter experts for the software when it comes out, so if you need any help in creating templates or dealing with the software, please coordinate that with us. Once we do go live with Primavera, we'll migrate the existing schedules that we have in Artemis right now over to Primavera as they are. We will have a new master template that's being worked on, and mainly right now what we're focusing on is the Division of Engineering. They've been working with between the design office and the environmental office, adding quite a few activities to that they want to see in the master template, and it's for two reasons: to get a better, to be able to better track the status of projects, and also use that for resource management. As many of you know, in the Division of Engineering, Russell's been pushing resource management for several years now, since he's been the Division Director of Engineering, and so that's the roadway design and environmental office had been doing that in Microsoft Project, and as many of you know, Microsoft Project will not be available at some point in the future, and so we will need to do this in one software, and that's really the benefit of going to Primavera, is that we'll be able to do that in one software, not have employees using two different softwares to try to track resources plus status of projects. So our plan is to have that new master template in Primavera when we do go live. We have a development environment that we're working in that as soon as Chris Rudd, also he's been one of the core team members along with Teresa and Andy from Roadway Design that's been working with environmental on adding these activities. The reason they're working together is their activities depend on each other so much. So they want to make sure that they added the proper activities and with the proper logic in there to better track projects and resources. And so once we do go live and have the existing projects migrated over as they are, we will work with the design group managers and the project managers kind of almost on a project by project basis on if we need to add these additional activities into the existing projects. We were thinking at one time we may could do a lot of that globally, but that's probably not going to work because each project has been approved, given durations, and the templates we have are just standard durations. So we'll work with the design group managers and PMs to get that done, and any new projects that move forward after we go live will be using the new master template that will have these additional activities. So the offices that are not in the Division of Engineering, if you haven't already done so, be thinking about activities that you may need in a template to track resources or to track project status. And like Bobby said, we'll be using this for offices that don't have projects. A good example would be the Office of Planning for STIP development every year and TIP developments. We might to use Primavera for that. And so we'll help you create those templates and get those into the software as needed. Let's see. I think that's all I have at this moment. Does anyone have any questions so far on this? All right, thank you.
Okay, the effects that it may have on program delivery, or actually the program in general. I see this as a great opportunity for us to take advantage of learning the scheduling opportunity for those of you that don't have a whole lot of experience with scheduling. We're starting from the ground up. So this is the opportunity you can learn, you can grow, and this will help us to build, and we will have a clearer understanding of everything that's involved in that project schedule. So I hope that you guys will take full advantage of the opportunity to fully learn this scheduling tool. I think that may have been one of the pitfalls of our previous or our current or existing scheduling tool. A lot of individuals that was not aware of all of the capabilities that it has. So please, I want to really emphasize that we really need to learn this scheduling tool and all that it has to offer. And as Bobby stated, we have the tool, but the tool is worth nothing, or it will do nothing unless we input information that is correct. So it will still require you to make sure that the information that's in the scheduling tool is updated and is accurate. You will not, it does not take away that responsibility. It's a great opportunity to help us manage the projects that's in the steps so that we will know what is being delivered, when it can be delivered. You will be able to filter projects by the PM. You will be able to find out what projects you have that need to be delivered in that funding year, what activities, specific activities that you need to be working on, or that you need to maybe pull on that subject matter expert and ask them for further assistance to ensure that they are meeting that schedule. So there's a lot of capabilities with the scheduling software, and I just really want us to take full advantage of it. Collaboration, we need to make sure that we are communicating with engineering services. We are still communicating with all those subject matter experts, utilities. All of these offices will still have activities. The right-of-way office, the software does not take away those responsibilities. It enhances. And again, I'll emphasize that we need to take full advantage of it. And the part that I'm really excited about is adding the resources. And it may not happen when we roll it out in May, but we will have the opportunity to link resources to the activities, which is something, Russell's been working on. We've been working on for years when I was the state scheduling engineer, still trying to link the resources to the activities. That is the only way that we will be able to determine if we can truly deliver the projects on time. As we migrate to the new software, it will be very important that the information that's brought over is updated. Please check your project schedules and make sure that the dates in there are current and updated. I'm not sure exactly when that plug will be pulled, when we need to make sure that we have everything set and it will be converted over. But we don't want to wait until that date. We need to start now. Monitor your schedules now. If something is completed, it should show completed. And again, the information that's in the system, if the information is not correct, then we won't have good information to report. And I think that's all that I have.
Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Holder. I work in the Office of Roadway Design. I'm going to discuss the benefits of P6 to the engineering divisions. I don't think of it as an impact. I think of it as a benefit. Currently, roadway design is used in MS Projects as our scheduling software. And basically, we're transferring that data into Artemis. And it's duplicate work to me, and with the rollout of P6, we'll eliminate the need to update two softwares. Also, with the rollout of P6, it'll allow us to work collectively with program control and program delivery in developing initial schedules. Currently, we develop the initial schedules using MS Projects, and we give that to the PM to decipher and try to put into Artemis. The rollout of P6 will allow us to compare apples to apples when we're developing the initial schedules. As far as our strategy and business plan for the engineering division, P6 will only enhance what we're currently doing. We're on the right track, and I think it's going to be a great tool for the department as a whole. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
So one of the things that we want to iterate is that with Primavera P6, there are other DOTs already using the solution. We have success stories from New York State, Texas DOT, New Jersey DOT, Delaware DOT. Some of this information is available on the Oracle microsites or Oracle web pages under Primavera. And but the bottom line is it is a tried and trusted solution within the DOT space, okay? We will be leveraging whatever we can from best practices from other DOTs. There are also user groups available to you locally for Primavera, and there's also discussions about starting up or DOT-specific user groups for Primavera use. So as we have more information on the different user groups and how they're being established, we will share that with you, okay? So again, we're going to leverage whatever we can from the best practices. Sharon has worked firsthand with New York State. As she goes through the demonstration, she'll talk to you about some of her experiences there. Okay? Any questions? All right, next slide, please. It's you. So with this, Sharon's going to go through the Primavera overall concepts and where we are at this stage of the project and do the demo.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sharon Dorney. As Samir mentioned, I actually was the lead consultant for the Primavera implementation for New York State DOT as well. We finished phase 1 of their implementation. We completed that about 2.5 years ago. They've recently re-engaged with Oracle to do phase 2 of their implementation, and there's a lot of parallels to what you guys are doing here. In that prior to using P6, New York State DOT was also using Artemis as their scheduling application, actually a combination of Artemis and Microsoft Project. So they did convert over to P6, and the first phase of their implementation was both the planning and engineering divisions. And as phase 2 of their implementation, what they're beginning work on now is actually integrating their construction schedules into their P6 database, and then also they're just now embarking on resource management. Now, for you guys, that is part of your phase 1 implementation, is doing the resource management piece, but they had some other challenges that they were dealing with as part of the first phase of their implementation. So it's good. I've had some experience that I was there at New York State DOT for about 2 years, working with their initial implementation. So I do have some experience with New York State, or in the DOT space. And I'll be the primary lead consultant here, helping you guys with your changeover from Artemis to Primavera. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been working with the Primavera products for about 11 years. The last 7 years have been specifically in consulting. And then as far as what we're going to go through today, I'm going to do a brief introduction to Primavera P6 and just sort of try and familiarize you with some of the components and concepts and the terminology of Primavera. And we'll go through just a series of slides with some screenshots and talk about sort of the basic functionality of Primavera. And then once we conclude that section, I will actually log into the system and give you a brief live demo so you can actually see the application in use. The other thing is this conference room pilot is really intended to be the first of a series of introductions to P6, right? So this is at its very basic, high level, what is Primavera, what does it look like, what's sort of the look and feel of the application, what can you expect coming down the road. Also understand that we're still very much in the development phase, so anything that you see on screen, it's subject to change. We're here because we want to get the word out sort of early and often so that you have a chance to provide feedback into what it is we're doing and what we're developing, so that come implementation time, and I think if you looked at that timeline that we had set up there before, come April, we don't want it to be that's the first time that you've seen Primavera and everything is a new and a surprise for you. I think as Bobby had said too, as I go through the next series of slides, if you have questions as we're going through, please feel free, raise your hand, ask questions. You'll get a lot more out of it if it's a little bit more of an interactive session. We will do question and answers at the end as well, if you'd prefer to hold your questions. But if you're thinking of something or something is not clear that you're seeing or hearing, by all means, please feel free to stop and ask the question, and we'll answer as best we can. Okay? So that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started with Primavera P6. Essentially, when we say Primavera P6, it's a series of components that actually make up the application. The primary application would be the project portfolio and resource management piece of Primavera. So by projects, we're really talking about your scheduling software, right? So the projects piece of Primavera is essentially what's replacing Artemis. In addition to that, there's other components, including a portfolios piece, which allows you to do high-level portfolio analysis. And portfolio, in Primavera terms, is really just a collection of projects. And then also there's the resource management component, which I know is something that's really important to Georgia DOT, and the ability to do capacity planning is something that is integral in Primavera. There's also a reporting piece that you'll be deploying here as well, that this will allow you to report on both your projects and your resources directly out of Primavera. And then finally, there's a piece called P6 Analytics, which is an add-on piece that GDOT has purchased as part of your software application, which P6 Analytics, we're not going to get into detail today, but further down the line, when we figure out a deployment strategy for P6 Analytics, we'll likely hold another session to sort of introduce you to that. Basically, what P6 Analytics is, it's a graphical reporting tool. And so, again, we'll take a look at that once we get into that space later. Next slide. Okay, so P6 is a fully web-based application at this point. So all you'll have, there won't be anything that you'll need to install on your desktop when you go to launch P6. You'll just launch a internet browser from anywhere within the GDOT network. So that includes if you're VPNing in from home, you'll be able to access the application just with a web browser. Also, it's LDAP compliant, which basically means you'll use your GDOT username and password, so you don't have to remember any new passwords or anything. You'll use your username and password to log in. Okay. This is just a screenshot of what the application looks like when you go to the home page. Again, it's just your username and password. Go ahead and click login. And then the Primavera is divided into 5 major sections. The 2 that we're going to talk to and take a look at today are the dashboards and the projects sections. In addition to the dashboards and project sections, we also have a portfolio section, which I mentioned before. Portfolios is just a group of projects, so it allows you to do high-level portfolio analysis. The resource management piece, we will talk about resources a little bit today in terms of how you assign resources to activities and resourcing on projects, but we're not going to get into the full resource management capabilities in this demonstration. And then finally, the reporting piece, again, that's something that we'll talk about at a later time in another one of these sessions. So this is just an example of what you would expect to see when you log in. The first thing you'll see when you log in is what we call a dashboard. Each of those little windows that's in the dashboard we call portlets. And basically, they can be configured to display information about whatever projects it is that you're interested in seeing. And you'll see across the top of the screen there, those are the series of different tabs, the dashboards, portfolios, projects, resources, and reports. So those are each of those 5 sections that we were talking about there. Go ahead to the next slide. So when we talk about dashboards, that was that home page, essentially, that you land on when you log in. So with other web-based applications, I'm sure you're used to sort of that concept of having a home page. Right, so these are fully configurable. Now, as part of the implementation, we will be configuring a series of dashboards that are available for users. So if you wouldn't necessarily have to configure your own dashboard if you don't want to, but you will have the ability to customize the dashboard to suit your own needs or to suit your own role. And again, it's just sort of that home page that gives you high-level information about whatever projects are the most important to you. You can have multiple dashboards at once. So you could configure a series of different dashboards with different filters for different projects, right? So you may have current projects, you may have planned projects, you may have closed projects, information that you want to see presented in a different way, and you can have a series of dashboards set up to view that information. Dashboards can either be based on one single project. So if you are someone who is only ever working on one project at a time, right, you can set up a dashboard to only show you information about that one particular project. Or you can set it up to look at information about multiple projects or a portfolio of projects. And you can also create dashboards and then share them with other users. Right, so you can create a dashboard, configure it to the specific needs of your team, and then share that dashboard with the other members of your team, so not everyone has to go in and recreate the same dashboards. The second section we'll talk about here is the project section. This is really the meat of the application. Right, the project section is essentially, how I said before, what is replacing what you guys are currently using Artemis for, and in some cases Microsoft Project. Right, this is the primary working location for most users. From this section, we have what we call the EPS page. This is a big term, P6 term, the EPS, or the Enterprise Project Structure. I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. But from the EPS page, this is where you'd see a list of all of the projects that you have access to. Also within the project section, you'd find the activities page. On the activities page, this is where you would see the detail activities of any one or multiple projects. And that would include actually the work breakdown structure and the detailed activities of the projects. There are some additional pages within that project section, including the project workspace, which the project workspace is very similar to a dashboard, whereas a dashboard is specific to the user and multiple projects. It's high-level information of the project. A project workspace is at the project level, and every person that has access to that one project would see that same homepage that's associated with that project. Team usage, that's a resource tool. There's also a page where you can track and view issues, documents, and risks. So this is just a screen capture of what we're looking at on the EPS page. The colored bands that you see, those are actually what we call the nodes of the enterprise project structure, which essentially it's like how you're going to group and sort your projects. And then anything that has a little folder icon next to it, that's an actual individual project. So again, this concept of the EPS, or the enterprise project structure, it's a P6 concept. And if you think about it, you can sort of think about it in terms of when you have a folder structure, like on your computer, like how do you organize your documents on your computer? It's like a hierarchy or a folder structure. That's essentially what the enterprise project structure is. It's how do we want to organize our projects within the database. It is also the structure by which we can control how users access different projects. It enables us to summarize data and resources across projects. And we'll take a look at what the specific EPS is that we've developed for Georgia DOT in just a minute. The structure itself is combined of three things, what we call routes, nodes, and projects. The routes are, a route is the highest level of the hierarchy. The nodes would be any children within the hierarchy, and then the projects are these individual schedules within the EPS. So I don't know how clearly you can see this, but this is essentially the EPS structure that we've created as our first draft for Georgia DOT. Within Georgia DOT, there's a separate category for IT projects. IT will also be using Primavera to manage their projects as well. And then also, you'll see at the same level of the IT projects, there's the transportation program, which is then subdivided into a series of nodes underneath of that. The first of which being pre-construction, which is then subdivided into a series of nodes there as well. And then some of the other major programs that will be where we'll be housing these schedules. There's also this concept of having a sandbox in terms of, in Primavera, when we talk about a sandbox, this is just an area where users would be able to essentially make copies of projects, to do what-if analysis, or to do work on projects that you don't want to actually put into your live current schedule, would be the sandbox. So each group would have their own sandbox in addition to having a node for their active schedules as well. Does anybody have any questions about this EPS structure? Yes, sir. Yeah, so the question is, are there different security levels or access levels within the EPS? Absolutely. That's the primary function, one of the primary functions of the EPS in and of itself, is that we can assign users at any level within this EPS structure. And you can assign them at multiple levels. So we could give someone access at the very highest level. We could give them read-only access to those projects. And then for one specific node within that EPS structure, we could give them read-write access to edit specific schedules. And when any one user logs into the system, like in this screenshot, I'm logged in as an administrator, and so I'm seeing the entire enterprise project structure, whereas as a user, if you only have access to the current active schedules and then maybe a single sandbox, you would only see those pieces that pertain to your role in the organization when you log in, right? So we'll go through a series of figuring out what access different groups need to have, and as part of our user acceptance testing, make sure that everyone has the appropriate access and the ability to edit the data that they need to be able to edit for their individual role. Any other questions about the EPS structure? Okay. Okay, so then once we're actually logged into the application, right, to open a project, really simple. From within that EPS page, you can just click on a project. You can right-click and choose Open Project. It'll immediately open the project. There's also an Open Projects dialog box. If you have the need to open several projects at once, that's probably the easiest way to do it, is use the Open Projects dialog box. It allows you to select multiple projects at once. And then how you know a project is open is that little folder icon that we saw within the EPS structure will just open up when the project is actually opened. We have a screenshot of that. So what we're looking at here, this is actually a view of the Open Projects dialog box. So again, this is if you were going to be opening multiple projects, it's showing on the left pane of the screen, it's showing all of the projects that you have access to, right? And then you would just select whichever projects you want to open, and using the arrow buttons, you move them over into the selected projects area, and then just click OK, and those projects are automatically open. Now, it won't automatically switch into the details of the project. You'll still be on the same screen. You will just now see that the little folder icon next to the project itself is open. Okay, once you open a project, in order to be able to see the details of that project, you would go ahead and click on the Activities page. From the Activities page, this is where you're going to see both the WBS or the work breakdown structure, as well as the detailed activities of your schedules. The WBS is essentially the internal hierarchy within the project. So whereas the EPS is the hierarchy of how projects are organized within the enterprise, the WBS is how is work organized within any one schedule, right? So the WBS, that's the typical work breakdown structure is being developed by your program control group in their master template, which essentially it's any work breakdown structure really would be like dividing the project into sort of logical chunks of work. Within the work breakdown structure, then, is where you have your individual activities, right? So that's the also called tasks, events, items, etc. And this is just a screenshot of what that looks like in the activities page. You can see in the bar on the top where activities is highlighted. With beneath there, the green band is the project itself. And then the blue bands, that's the first level of the WBS or the work breakdown structure. And then within each WBS is where we see the individual activities or tasks. This concept of activity views, basically an activity view is what we were just looking at. It's just how do you choose to view the data within your project, right? So this is totally configurable. We will have a series of activity views created once we go live with the implementation. And what makes up the activity view is what columns of information am I displaying? What do I see a Gantt chart or do I not see a Gantt chart? What color are the bars in the Gantt chart? Do I have a filter on activities? How are those activities grouped and sorted? In the activity view we were just looking at, they were grouped by the work breakdown structure. Well, maybe you don't personally care about the work breakdown structure. You just want to see a flat list of all of the activities in the schedule in chronological order, right? So you can remove the grouping out of that activity view and just see that flat list of activities. So there are a number of different ways. This is really part of the power of the tool and how you can use it to not just look at your schedules, but to really analyze the data in your schedules.
Stop.
Okay. Everybody hear me? Okay. Also, the activity views, this is the primary method that you have for doing ad hoc reporting out of your schedules, right? So if you want any activity view that you create, you can also print as like a hard copy report. And so the reporting piece of Primavera, the separate reporting piece of Primavera, is really hard-coded reports. Whereas this, you have the ability as an individual user to pick and choose what data that you want to display in an activity view. Yeah, you can go ahead and... activity views can be customized, like I said, using data columns, the grouping and sorting, applying filters, customizing the bars in the Gantt chart, and also arranging what you see in the details. When we go into the live demo, I'll show you a little bit more about the activity views there as well. And this is just a screenshot of the customization section for the activity views. Thank you. So you can see across the top here, this is where you have the columns, grouping, filters, bars, Gantt chart, the activity network, and access tabs. Just like we talked about dashboards, you can create them and share them with multiple users. You can do the same with activity views. So if you create an activity view that works well for your team, not every person in your team has to go and recreate that same activity view. You can create one and share it with a group of users so that when everyone is looking at the schedule, they're all looking at the same information configured in the same way. Sure.
So one thing I want to add about activity views is that activity views are enterprise specific, like they're global, they're user specific, or they're multi-user, but they cut across whatever projects you have open. So they're not tied to any one project. You can reuse them across multiple projects. That's another added feature of creating the activity views one time and reusing them. Okay.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Anybody have any questions so far about anything that we talked about at this point? I'm sorry. Okay, so looking at the screenshot, the question was what's the difference between global activity codes, EPS activity codes, and project activity codes. Activity codes are basically attributes that you can assign to an activity within a schedule. One of the activity codes that you guys use here is the activity owned by office code to say which group is actually responsible for updating an activity. So that's what an activity code is in general. As far as the difference between a global activity code versus an EPS activity code or a project-specific activity code, is that a global activity code is a code that's defined in the database, and all projects within the database have access to that same code. So activity owned by Office is a global activity code because it's something that all projects within the database have access to. An EPS-specific activity code would be, if you remember when we took a look at the EPS structure, you can create a code that would only apply to the projects within that specific EPS node, right? So I know like the TIA program is a big program that's going to be coming on with DOT, right? So if they have a series of codes that are specifically related to TIA projects, but that nobody else in GDOT cares about, they could create codes at that EPS level that are then only available to the projects within that EPS node. Right? And then the third level of activity codes would be the project-specific activity code, which would be you want to create a code or an attribute that you assign to activities only within that one project. Right? So it's just specific to that one project. Maybe you just want to be able to tag all of the activities that are that may be delayed for a certain reason. You just want to be able to essentially tag those activities without creating like a global activity code nobody else cares about. So that would be a project-specific activity code. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Will this work in conjunction with TPRO, or is this going to replace TPRO?
Great question. This is definitely working in conjunction with TPRO.
So TPRO will still be filled out and all the data will go in it? TPRO will still be filled out and used the way it's business.
Yeah, and there's going to be an integration between Primavera and TPRO. So when projects are created in TPRO, they will automatically then be pushed to Primavera and created in Primavera, and then the schedule is fully developed within Primavera. Right, and we're still working out some of the specifics of that, but yeah, we're definitely not at this time replacing TPRO. There's going to be a two-way conversion or two-way integration between TPRO to get information to and push information back. Any other questions? Okay.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm here in District 7, and a lot that we've heard has been primarily focused to project management. It seems like from a large scale of the overall project, but more of what myself and my team do is more parcel management. So if you have one project that has 200 parcels on it, are you able to zoom in at that level with this program, or does the software not do that in your experience in other states?
I'm not familiar with the terminology as far as what a parcel would be. Do you talk to that?
A parcel would be like a particular property owner or something?
Adrian, it'll be like we talked about earlier about if you develop activities for the right-of-way phase for you, and you can also for the right-of-way activities, you can drill down and create your own task within that activity that's specific to that project. That'll be for your use and keeping up with what the status is for each parcel, if that's the way you would like to do it. And we'll be working with the Office of Right-of-Way and Phil and his staff to add any activities that he wants to see on every project that has right-of-way activities. But you will also be able to add information to that specific project. Does that answer your question, Adrian?
Yes, thank you.
They don't go away, okay? So we're keeping all of their functionality that they have in TPRO for right-of-way parcels.
Correct. Yeah, your TPRO information will stay the same as it is, especially for now, after we roll it out.
Are there any other questions before we move on? Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is updating projects. We'd always recommend, and what you guys have right now already is a standard project updating process. And when we say standard, it basically means that everyone is updating their schedules at a certain point in time. Like, I think you guys do it now every other week is generally when you update your schedules. And then as far as establishing a Primavera process for updating the schedules, the steps that are typically included in that are developing the schedule, creating a project baseline, identifying what we call the data date, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. But the data date in Primavera terms is the same thing as what in Artemis is referred to as time now. It's the concept of the point at which the point in the schedule at which everything is updated, right? So everything's updated the as of date for the schedule. So establishing a new data date, entering activity progress, A new piece of this now with the introduction of resource management is also updating the individual resource assignments as well, and then rescheduling the project using that new data date, right? So we identify, you have the old data date where the last time the project was updated to, you identify a new data date, you update all of the activities occurring within that time period, and then reschedule all of the remaining work using the new data date. So again, the data date is the date to which actual performance data is reported, and also the date from which all future work is scheduled. Typically in Primavera, you would see that represented as a blue line down the middle of your screen. And Primavera is very strict in that if you do not update a task when the project gets rescheduled, if you have not put an actual date on that task, it will be pushed out in the future. It will be pushed out past the data date. It's not going to allow you to sort of hold information prior to the data date. If it hasn't actually started, you can't say it's actually going to start yesterday. Right? Now, if you make a mistake, that said, if you make a mistake and you just have forgotten to update something, you'll notice when your schedule gets pushed out erroneously, and you can always go back and make corrections as need be. But the data date then is the point from which all future work is going to be scheduled. And again, this concept does exist in Artemis, and it's just referred to as time now. When we talk about progressing activities, basically that means we're updating actual start and actual finish dates. There's a couple of different ways you can do this, and we'll take a look at a screenshot in a minute. But there's an activity detail section within that activities view where you can mark an activity as started and change what the start date is and finished, and then put what the finish date is. You can also put columns right into your activity view for actual start and actual finish and enter those dates. If an activity has started but is not yet completed, there are some additional pieces that you need to update for that activity. This is sort of a new concept too. I think for most of you, what you're doing right now in Artemis or in T-Pro is you're just putting started and finish dates on those activities, whereas in Primavera, we're asking you to also put what the % complete is of an activity, and also the remaining duration, right? So when you're thinking of that concept of the data date, it's based on whatever that future, that new data date is, how much more time do you need to complete an activity, right? It's not automatically going to reduce the duration of an activity. If you have an activity that's 45 days long and it's worked 30 days, if you don't reduce that remaining duration to 10 or 15 or however many days you actually have left to work on that activity, it will continue to schedule a full 45 days more of work out in the future, right? So it really does require a level of updating that maybe you haven't done as much in the past before, whereas before you were only doing start and finish dates. Also, with the introduction of resource management, you'll also be updating individual resource assignments as well. So a resource may be assigned to work on an activity for 40 hours during the week, and you can actually update that individual resource assignment to say they actually worked 50 hours or they worked 20 hours on that individual task for that week. Does anybody have any? I know this is different from what you guys were doing before.
As far as like the remaining duration, and you're going to have somebody else from a different office maybe changing, that's their tab. So this is going to show you the baseline, and if they show they're 50% complete, let's say the task was originally 30 days and they're 50% complete, and you think it means 15 more days, but if they do their duration as being, they still need another 30. So it's going to show you that, but still show you the baseline.
Yeah, so the baseline is locked in place, right? The baseline is always going to be whatever the baseline was established to be. Primavera does have the ability to sort of handle that in two different ways. You can choose to link remaining duration and % complete. So whereas if you say an activity is 50% complete, then you have half the duration left of that activity. What you guys will most likely do, and what most customers do, is they choose not to link that, right? Because we all know just because I used half my duration doesn't necessarily mean that I'm half done with the activity, right? So you will be able to see what the baseline duration of an activity is. That will be locked in place. But then if you say that if you only had 30 days budgeted for that task, and you say you worked 15 days already on it, and you still have another 40 days left to work on it, you'll see that reflected in your current schedule, right? What we usually call in Primavera is your current schedule, versus, and you can see the comparison against your baseline schedule as well. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So what's reflected on the pre-construction status report in terms of the percentage completed? Is it locked-in baseline percentage, or is it not the duration that you're planning, or you're changing around?
The question is what's reflected on the pre-construction status report as for percent complete. I'm not sure of the answer.
It's based on time, right?
Yeah, Chairman, that'll be developed, but basically the pre-construction status report, is going to share the same information that it does today, but we will develop that, percent complete to give, a more accurate percentage complete of those activities.
Yeah, and when we talk percent complete in Primavera terms, there's a number of different ways that Primavera allows you to calculate percent complete. One of which is as it relates to duration, right? A duration percent complete. How much of your duration have you used, and that generates a percent complete. You can also base it off of your resource units. How much have your resources worked in terms of calculating the percent complete? Or there's what we call a physical percent complete, which is really just saying it's not based on duration, it's not based on effort. You're just saying this activity, you're sort of making an estimate of what the percent complete is of an activity, regardless of duration or effort on those tasks. Any other questions about progressing schedules? Okay. So this is just a quick view of an activity view that we created where you can quickly update activity tasks. And you can see for that the activity 90100 that's highlighted there, we have a column that shows the start date, which in Primavera, anytime you see the start, that's going to show you either the early start of the activity if it hasn't started yet, or it'll show you the actual start of the activity if it has actually started already. And then right next to it, we have the actual start column. So we're seeing it was scheduled to begin on January 31st, and then you can actually enter in what the actual start is of that activity. Same thing then for the finish dates, what the scheduled finish date of the activity was, and then next to it you can enter in what the actual finish of the activity is. Okay, and then once activities are updated to close out of projects, you can use that same open projects dialog box that we took a look at earlier to actually close projects. Or you can simply, within that EPS page, you just go to Actions and Close All, and it'll automatically shut down all projects.
Does this automatically save?
It does not. It's a good question. So the question was, does it automatically save? No, it doesn't. You will, however, be prompted to save if you don't. Right, so there you'll definitely get prompted, and it's worth starting to say it now because it needs to be said over and over and over again. That as you're working in Primavera, it's best practice to save frequently. So, yeah.
And I just want to add that it's no different than what we had today. That's our same way.
Okay, go ahead. So this is just a quick screenshot of the close all functionality. Again, if you hadn't saved data at this point, you'd be prompted, do you want to save your data changes? And then you would just go ahead and click yes. Go ahead. And then to log out, there's a little icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that says log out. You just want to go ahead and log out. We do want to stress that it's important that you log out and not let yourself be timed out of the application. It's just easier for everyone so sessions don't get hung up. Does anybody have any questions about, I know we kind of went through that quickly. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, question?
I saw the folder for active projects.
The question was in the EPS structure, Harrell noticed there was a folder for active projects, but she asked about long-range projects. And, you know, like Sharon said, well, we're still developing, you know, the EPS structure. That's just really our first go at it. But long-range projects are active. So the yeah. Yeah, because I mean, when we say long-range projects, you know, you're talking about either right-of-way and/or construction being in long range, but the PE's active. So those are active projects. They just may not have a schedule. So if it's determined we'll need a, you know, separate folder for those projects, we'll definitely have that in EPS.
When we start to develop an initial schedule for a project, is it going to be where we can send it out to all the subject matter experts, everybody go in, look at it, make their changes, and then y'all will go in and lock it after we've come up with an acceptable schedule? Is that kind of how it's going to work?
The question was, when we're developing initial schedules, we'll use different subject matter experts to be able to go in that and in developing, you know, in the Primavera P6 and develop the schedule there, as opposed to the way we do it now, which is either by email or by a hard copy of a PDF and so on and so forth. And yes, you will be able to do that. We'll set up that business process, you know, that practice on how to do that. Mike?
I think what he's asking is schedule review committee sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
There's a note in there already for that.
There is, yep.
The intent was for y'all to do the draft, and then all the committees go in and look in that sandbox for the.
Yes. The process will be the same as it is today, but you will be able to use the software and make it where you don't have to do it by email and do it by whatever.
What their changes, how that affects
Absolutely.
everybody else and all as it is.
Absolutely. For now, it's
Dates and you don't know what it's going to be everybody else.
correct. David's remark was now the way it happens is they develop the schedules independent of other offices, and so then the PM and program control scheduler has to put those together and see how the proposed start and finish dates interact with other activities that aren't in the same office that are part of the logic setup that has to be done before. So it'll be a lot easier in developing the initial schedules and seeing when someone puts an actual or a proposed actual start date, how it will impact any other activities that follow.
In the other states, I think you said you work with North Carolina.
New York State.
New York State.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did they have an office that did all of the updates, or are they similar to what we have? It's updated by everyone throughout the department.
Okay, so Janitha was asking about my experience with New York State Department of Transportation and if they had a centralized update office. Is that
the updates?
No, they very similar to what you guys are doing. They definitely have a distributed update process, and they were actually moving more toward where they had their schedulers and project managers were the ones that were when they were using Artemis, only those people were updating the schedules, but then they opened it up to the individuals who are actually doing the work on the tasks to be updating their own schedules, similar to what you guys plan to do here as well. So, yeah, and it's a transition. It's definitely, moving from one methodology to another, but it's working well for them now.
Once the project goes live, currently, we make changes, but we have to have a way on program control to actually update to see the changes in the schedule and the management lead and the baseline and that comparison. When we go live, since it's web-based, will it be automatic? I mean, when we put a date in there that updates 2 or 3 things, will we automatically see?
No, it's still going to be the same process of how it is with Artemis now, and that you'll go in and make all of your updates, and then the projects will be rescheduled at a single point in time all at once, and then you'll see those changes reflected after that.
In the sandbox, will they be able to see?
Yeah, so in the sandbox, users in the sandbox have more open security privileges than they would have within the active projects node. So if you want to be able to make some changes and see what the impacts of those changes are immediately, you'd be able to go and make those changes and reschedule the project yourself from within that sandbox node, but your actual official schedules are going to be part of that standard update process. And really, because you have this distributive environment where you have multiple people working in the schedules, you don't want to have dates constantly moving. You know, not everybody has made their updates yet, and the schedule constantly be in flux. So that will be that standard, you know, rescheduling the project every 2 weeks to see those changes reflected.
You're talking about sandbox. Is that like you could move your schedule into the sandbox and play around with it?
You can make a copy of it.
Make a copy.
Right, so you can make a copy of your schedule and put it in the sandbox to do whatever you want. The thing to note about the sandbox, though, in most cases it's a one-way street, right, and that your active project is going to be here. You make a copy and do whatever what-if scenario here, and then when you determine what it is you want to do in the what-if section, you then go rebuild that in your current schedule. Like, you're not going to make a copy, make a bunch of changes, and then post it back up here. That it's a one-way.
Can that be sent to somebody else, i.e. a scheduler, who can make those changes?
Yeah, and so the great thing about when you have an enterprise system like this, right, is that there's no sending needed, right? You put it in your EPS node and you just tell Jason where it is, and then he goes in and makes whatever changes to that schedule. So you don't have to send him a copy of the schedule. He's actually looking at your version of the schedule and making whatever changes. So it can be a truly collaborative environment there. Any other questions?
Sometimes the local consultants send us the schedule. If they send it Primavera, is that compatible with the things they can?
So we do have the ability to import projects into Primavera. That said, we want to be very careful about how we do that because it does have the potential to import sort of junk into our database. We'll have to develop a procedure for doing that. Typically what we normally do is we import schedules into a staging environment. So we can look at it before we import it into our live production environment. We import it into a staging environment so we can see what's there, and then export it out of the staging environment and into our production database. There certainly is a way that we can do that. It just has to be a managed process. Right. Yes? So the question is basically around training and how it's going to be rolled out to all of the users. Did you want to speak to that?
Sure, I'll let Mike do it.
Oracle is on task to train the project managers. I think we're up to about 120 now.
Yeah.
Train the trainers where we're going to engage the training office. That's the resources where they're going to be updating activities. So yeah, you'll be involved. Yes, you will be involved in the updating of activities, but it's to train the trainer will train you on what, Oracle will be training you on what to go train the department. But for project managers, Oracle is on task to train them. I think it's a 5-day class, probably sometime in April, right before we roll out. Does that answer your question? The training office will also be sometime in April.
Actually, I'd say we probably want to involve the training office earlier in planning. So, yeah.
We'll involve the training office earlier as far as the planning, but the training itself will probably occur in April. Training as close as possible to the time we deploy.
Any other questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and log into the system and just give you guys, go over sort of the same information we just took a look at, but take a look at it live. Okay, so as we said, Primavera is fully web-based, right? So I'm just accessing the application. I open up an internet browser, type in the URL, and then it would just be my GDOT login to actually log into the system. So username, password. Okay. And then I go ahead and log in. And so again, the first thing that I see when I log in is going to be the dashboard or the home page. Now in this view, I only have one dashboard set up. If I had multiple dashboards here, this dashboard is called the personal workspace. You would see a series of other names listed across the top, and I could switch in between dashboards just by clicking each dashboard. Again, each one of these little windows is what we call a portlet, and these are fully configurable to show whatever information that's important to you about your projects. You can see this dashboard is filtered by a portfolio, which is essentially a portfolio is a group of projects that I created, which is just called Sharon's projects, right? So you can create a portfolio manually just by saying, I want this project, and this project to be included. Or you could create a filtered portfolio by saying, create a portfolio that's all projects that have Joe Smith as the project manager. Okay, again, across the top here, these are the 5 major sections. We have our dashboards, the portfolio section where we can do detailed portfolio analysis, the project section that we talked about in a lot of detail, the resources section, and then also the reporting section. I'm going to go ahead and click on the projects section. And then within the projects, this is what I was talking about, the different pages that are available within the project section itself. The primary page that you would land on when you go into the project section is that EPS page, or the enterprise project structure. We also have activities, and then the workspace, team usage, issues, documents, and risks. Depending on how it's configured for an individual user, you may or may not see all of those pages when you log in. What we're looking at here is the colored bands here, again, are the EPS structure that we've developed for GDOT. And in the upper right-hand corner, I talked about having activity views, the ability to customize the information as you're seeing it on the page within the activity screen. You can also do the same thing in this EPS view and create EPS views as well. So here's a couple of different EPS views that I've created here. So if I wanted to only see the EPS structure and hide all of the projects, I've created this EPS view as well. So this is showing me only what that detailed EPS structure is within the application. Right, and also when you look in this drop down here, you can see how those views are divided out into either user views, which means I've created it specific to me, only I have access to it. You can have a multi-user view, which is a view that I've created but I've shared with other people, or you can have global views that are going to be available to all users that have access to the system. I'm going to switch into my default view. All right, so again, this is the root, which is GDOT, and then each node within it, we have IT, the transportation program, pre-construction, and then within the active projects, here's where we see a detailed listing of projects. Again, this little folder icon, if it appears open, like in this project right here, that indicates that that project itself is open. Now, if you notice, I didn't open any projects yet. I just logged into the system. So this means basically I didn't close the projects when I logged out last time. Now, when you log out of the system, it will automatically close the project. It just remembers what project was the last one you had opened. So when you log into the system again, it'll reopen whatever the last project you had open was, if you didn't close out prior to logging out. If I wanted to close all projects, I can just go to Actions and close all. All right, that'll automatically close every project that I have open. To open a project, you would just pick whatever project you want. A couple of different things you can do. You can right-click and say Open Project. You'll notice there is another option here that's Open Exclusively, which basically, if you open a project exclusively, it means nobody else will be able to update that project while you have it opened in exclusive mode. So a use case for that would be if you're making major changes to a project, maybe to the logic or to something else, and you don't want other people in there actually making updates to the project while you're doing that, you might want to open it in exclusive mode.
And you're going to be able to toggle that for only certain people being able
Yes.
to.
Yeah, so that's a security, there's a security privilege for that says who can open a project in exclusive mode. The other way to open projects would be from the projects drop-down menu. If I go to projects and then open projects, this is that open projects screen, which is going to show me my EPS, and I can drill down to see whatever projects. What this is useful for is if you want to open multiple projects at a time, rather than having to scroll through your entire EPS structure and sort of do that control click, and pick certain projects. If you want to open or close certain projects, then you can use this open project window, and you would just either double click or click and use the arrow key to move projects over into the open projects. I'm going to go ahead and open just this one project here. Excuse me. I know the project is open now because the folder icon is open. If I now want to see the details of the project, including the WBS and the detailed activities of the project, I would just go ahead and click on the activities page. Now this note here is asking me, do I want to save my view changes? You get a couple of different messages when you're logged into Primavera. View changes would be things like columns, grouping and sorting, things like that. Like that's the activity view or the EPS view. Otherwise, you would see data changes or just do you want to save your changes, and that's if you've changed the name of the project or you've added new activities or something like that. Those are going to be your data changes. So I'm going to say no to saving my view changes. And now this is the details of the individual project itself. Right, so all of these bands that I'm seeing here, the colored bands, this is the work breakdown structure. Let me actually. So so this is the project. The green band at the top is the project, and then the blue bands beneath are the work breakdown structure. I can blow this up a little bit to show more by putting it into full screen mode. All right, so this should look pretty familiar to you. This is based on sort of the template that you guys are currently using for your projects. As far as the activity views that we talked about before, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see where it says default view. That's the view that I'm looking at right now. Again, you have the ability to create user-specific views, to have views that you can share with multiple users, and then also have global activity views as well. As far as updating activities, I do have a view here called Status Update. If I go ahead and click on that. All right, so in the Status Update, you notice now I have a column for start, actual start, finish, actual finish, remaining duration, and activity % complete. All right, so if I wanted to go and update my tasks, I would just pick whatever task was supposed to happen during the time period, double click on it, assign an actual date, right, and then go ahead and click to save the changes.
Does it have an option to add another column for original duration?
Yes. Yes, so the question was, can you add a column for original duration? Yeah, so if you wanted to configure your activity view to add additional columns, this little icon here is the actual icon for columns. You could click there. And then these are all the different fields that you can add to an activity view. Now they're grouped by category. So if we're looking for a column for original duration, we're going to find that under the durations grouping. And actually original duration in Primavera terminology is called planned duration. Right, so we could add a column for that planned duration field. And then I just use the arrow keys here to organize what order I want to see those columns in. Go ahead and click OK. And now you can see here's my planned duration versus my remaining duration. You can also see a column for actual duration, right, where the actual duration is going to show you how much time has elapsed since the start of the activity and the finish of the activity, or the start of the activity and the data date if the activity is not yet finished.
You just placed actual start date that is in the future, yet the program did nothing. It said okay to that.
Because the actual start date is always going to be in the future, actually. So the question was, I put an actual start date in the future. Until I reschedule the project, it is in the future, right? So you have let's say the last time your project was updated was December 1st. And then I put an actual start date of December 15th, or let's say December 10th, because I know the next time I reschedule the project, it's going to be December 15th. So the old data date is December 1st, so I put the start date in the future. Once I have all of the actual dates in, I move the data date to that December 15th date and then reschedule the project from there. So you're right in that I am putting it in the future to begin with, but understanding that I'm keeping the new data date in mind when I'm actually statusing the schedule. I know it's sort of an abstract concept.
So, and I think.
Do you need the microphone?
Yeah, thanks. So I think one of the things that, what date did you put in there, actually?
I just put December 18th.
Right. So I think your question was, hey, today is December 4th, and you put in the date of December 18th.
Oh yeah, for this particular project, I just wasn't paying attention.
If we did that in real life and scheduled the project and we didn't update the data date and we weren't at that current date, there are checks and balances in the system when we reschedule to flag that. Okay? So, for the purpose of the demo, it doesn't matter. But in real world, yeah, you can do that. But there are checks and balances in there that'll catch it.
Yeah, so you shouldn't do what I just did there. Like, I shouldn't put an actual date of December 18th on December 4th. That's 100% right.
So what if you put a date in the past, like November 18th?
Yes, November 18th you would put, right? Yeah.
No flag will come up there. That's normal, right?
That's normal.
Yes. Yes.
It's the same way you're
Any other questions about updating the activities or anything to do with activity views in the schedule?
You say that you can go in and you change the activity percentage complete?
Yeah, so, and it depends on what you have listed as your percent complete type. You can only manually update an activity percent complete type if it's if it's set to physical percent complete, which is the percent complete, which basically says I'm going to manually update it. Otherwise, like all of these ones that are grayed out here would be because the default in Primavera is to be set to duration percent complete, which you don't enter. It's calculated as a percentage of how much of the duration that you've used on the activity. So that's why they're grayed out. It's just in this example, I didn't have it set to physical percent complete, which is most likely what you guys will have your, you'll have yours set to physical percent complete, I would think. Any other questions? Yes.
Are there any sort of reminder notifications or something, like when I log in, if a date has passed and I hadn't updated it or anything, is it something that signals, hey, you need to put a date in?
Not so much a reminder. I mean, you can certainly set up a filter to find activities that are supposed to be updated within a certain time period. And so you can do like I'll create like a 1 month look ahead or a 2 week look ahead that'll show you all activities that are supposed to take place within a certain time period, so you know which ones that you're supposed to update. But as far as setting an actual reminder, there are some things when we get into resource management where you can, if as the user you're also assigned as a resource on a task, you can see all activities where you're assigned as a resource as well. We haven't sort of worked out all the specifics of how we're going to do that here at GDOT, but it's possible. Yes?
Could you Could you talk about the capability to be able to like do, frequently we have to figure out what is the critical path from here? What can Primavera do for us as far as giving us the critical path from where you are right now on the project scale?
Yeah, so the question was how can Primavera show you what the critical path is from this point forward? Primavera will automatically calculate the critical path for you. And as far as being able to quickly zone in on what that critical path is, there's a standard filter in your project schedule where you can say, show me only critical activities, right? And so if I were to go into my filters section, okay. So typically in Primavera, your critical activities are going to display in red, right? That's the default setting. If I wanted to create a filter to show only critical activities, yeah, apparently not. I can create a filter called critical. Where critical equals yes. And now I see only my critical path.
In our project management world and all of us, task managers, sometimes the critical path kind of shifts all of a sudden because certain things change. And so, you know, you can be spending resources on things that really don't affect the overall schedule because you're not working on critical activity.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And Primavera actually has a more advanced feature too that's multiple critical paths or multiple float paths, where it allows you to create a view, and it's a little bit more detailed to set up. So I won't do it as part of this demonstration, but you can actually set up a view where it'll show you not only your most critical path, but it'll then show you your second most critical path and your third most critical path and your fourth most critical path, right? Because there are so many of those, so many times when you're focusing only on the critical activities and you're not realizing that there's some other activity that is one day away from being on the critical path that you're not focusing your attention on, right? So you do have the ability to look at, in addition to your most critical activities, your second most critical activities and your third most critical activities, et cetera.
One more thing helpful to us in this environment is, can you give us an example of a report for like a 2-week look ahead?
Yeah.
What are the things I need to be watching out for over the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, and so there's this standard filter in Primavera that's called activities occurring within 10 days. The default right here is 10 days, but we can set that to be, 10 days is 2 weeks in Primavera terms, right? So this, just by turning on this filter, it's going to show you all activities that are scheduled to work from the data date, whatever the current data date is, plus 2 weeks. Right, so whether they're either going to start within that period of time or they started previously and will be working during that period of time, it'll automatically show you only those activities that are scheduled to happen within that time period. Yeah, and you can set it up, in addition to using sort of the standard one that's for 10 days, you can also create your own custom filter that would be a 1-month look ahead or a 3-month look ahead, you know, based on whatever needs that you have. Mike?
I just want to make sure I understood what you said. That 10 days is from the last data date?
Yes.
So if the last data date was 9 days ago, it's only going to show me the last 9 days plus tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not 10 days from today?
That's correct. It's not 10 days from today. It's from the data date.
And that capability, you can do that with portfolios and projects both?
I'm not sure if I understand the question about.
Well, let's say I have a portfolio of all the projects I'm managing. I can have a filter just show me what's coming up across all my projects.
So in order to be able to do that, so the question is, can you do that for multiple projects? right? So in order to be able to do that, what you would have to do is open all of the projects at the same time. So you can only do it from within the activities page, right? So that's a use case for you want to see, you have 10 projects you're working on, you want to see what are all the activities that I'm supposed to be looking at over the course of the next 2 weeks. You would have to open all 10 of those projects, right? And then it'll show, and then set that filter to show you the activities within that range.
Could he accomplish that same thing with a portlet on his dashboard?
No, because in the dashboards, it's not going to show you activity level information. It's only going to show you project level information on the dashboard. Yeah. So the two different ways that you could do it is you could do it, again, in the activities view with all the projects open. You could also create a report that would show you the information in like printed report format.
Or we could do it in analytics.
Or in P6 Analytics, which if you remember from the very beginning of the discussion, that's that sort of add-on reporting tool that we talked about. What other questions? Yes?
Maybe a question for David. The data date, is that a date that you gather for that update to the system?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes. The question was the data date. Is that something that program control is responsible for and that we will update? And that's correct. We do that now, and we, like Sharon said earlier, we refer to it as time now. So it's the same issue. We're planning on doing it every 2 weeks again. We'll make that final determination as we go through this implementation.
Yes. Do you publish a schedule for when the data dates are?
Yeah, we try to. Yeah, we just changed it. This the 15th and the every 2 weeks. But yeah, that'll be, and it's set now. Chante does that every 2 weeks, and she lets us know when it completes. Okay, but we will do it definitely on a consistent basis. Continuing to do it on a consistent basis when we go to P6 because of how important that is.
Obviously, this is probably based on a 7-day work, 5-day work week, 7 days, 8-hour days. Now, can you adjust your hours? Can you adjust your day, your work week? It's 6-day work week, 10-hour days, or?
You can. Primavera allows you to do that. Whether or not David's going to allow you to do that is a different story.
He can.
Yeah, no, you can. Primavera has the ability to set up multiple calendars where you can set what your work periods are, whether it's a 5-day work week or a 7-day work week or 4 10s or a 24-hour schedule. You have the ability to do that. Yeah, and so it can be set specific to an individual project, and actually each individual activity can be placed on its own calendar as well. So, yes, question?
One more really has to do with the step that we're into the construction phase, and especially in innovative deliveries where we're kind of one foot in pre-construction, the other foot in the construction phase. Is there ability to be able to take the contractor's Primavera schedule and then import it into the overall schedule that you've already got established?
Yeah, so this is, the question was, do you have the ability to take the contractor schedule and import it into your schedule? Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways that can be accomplished. As I mentioned before, anytime we talk about importing a schedule, there's some inherent risks with taking data that comes from somebody else's system and pulling it into yours. You certainly can do that. As far as taking that information and then importing it into an existing schedule, there are some different options around that. You can import it and choose to update your own schedule. You could import it as a separate project and then copy pieces of it into your schedule as well. I mean, yes, it can be done. As far as what the process is for doing that, we'd have to take a look at it and figure out the specifics of it for an individual scenario.
There's, for example, right-of-way acquisition in my world doesn't necessarily end before the contractor comes on board. So there's some activities that would overlap with what we're doing versus the contractor.
Yeah.
The ability to be able to integrate their approved schedule into ours is really important.
Yeah, and there, we definitely have the ability to do that. It's just sort of developing that process around how to do it, and not introduce a bunch of bad data into your GDOT system from external sources.
And Daryl, to follow up with that, that's why we set up EPS node for innovative program delivery, and why we have it for TIA. So you will be allowed to possibly import those, whereas we wouldn't do that for pre-construction projects. Does that make sense?
Any other questions? One other thing I did want to show you too, when we talked about activity views, if you're only interested in seeing the activities that are assigned to your group, again, we have that activity owned by field that you had in Artemis and you also have in Primavera. I've created a couple of views here that will automatically filter on those activities assigned to those groups. So if I wanted to see just right-of-way activities, I'm just changing my activity view. And this is now showing me only the activities that are assigned to right-of-way. Right, so I've created a filter that says if activity owned by is equal to right-of-way, right, and then I've assigned that filter to this activity view that I've called right-of-way activities, right, and so as Samir said before, once I create this view one time, I can now use this on any project that I have open, right, so I could open all my projects that I'm working on, so 3 or 5 or 10 different projects at once, and put this filter on, or look at this activity view and see only right-of-way activities. Or if I wanted to take a look at engineering services activities, these are all the engineering services activities for the project that's open, right? I could then even take it a step further and put an additional filter on it that says, show me only engineering services activities scheduled to occur within the next 2 weeks. All right, to really sort of narrow it down and focus your attention on the activities that you're supposed to be focused on. Yes, question?
In that view there, you have everything flip-flopped. It would be VE, PE, VINs, FFPR. Is there a way to put them in the correct order?
Yes. So this is just the way, I mean, this project is just a dummy project, but yeah, you can certainly, when we build out the actual template and the actual projects, they'll be in order. You can also change how things are grouped and sorted as well. I mean, I could even do here, take away, it's because it's such a small number of activities, maybe I don't even need to see that WBS grouping. So now I'm just seeing a flat list of activities that I can order chronologically. Yes, question?
We're going to have our set template, and it's going to be locked once we do it. Once the schedule's been approved, baseline. But like now, when we get a Microsoft project template, schedule from design, they've got a lot more additional breakdowns in there. Is there going to be a way for the individual people to break down their part? Maybe not for the rest of us to really care about, but subtasks to that overall task.
Yeah, we've been talking about that and coming up with a couple of different scenarios for how we might want to do that. I don't know that anything's been 100% decided yet in that, right?
Correct. I do want to say, and Adrian, that is what your question was. Kind of, you'll be able to add subtasks. Now, like David mentioned in his question, he gets a schedule from engineering division now, and it has a lot more activities in our Microsoft project schedule than what we have in our Artemis schedules. But as I stated earlier, we're about ready to develop the Microsoft project schedule that they're using into the development environment of P6. So we will have those activities, David, in there. And again, if there's subtasks that's specific to an activity that we don't necessarily need to put in the template, you'll be able to drill down and add those additional activities. And what we're still working on as far as the process is, who's going to be allowed to do that? Will we set them up where they can impact the current schedule and durations that are left and things like that.
Any other questions? Anyone? Yes.
Or if consultants have just a GDOT log-on password to be able to access it, so the GDOT.
So the question was whether consultants would have access or be able to log in?
Not in general,
Yeah.
but do you have consultants that do that now?
I'm just curious. I mean, we have, I guess you can relate it to like the file exchange or like even GUPS or something like that.
We did mention about TIA.
Yeah, I
TIA
mean,
would
that,
be the exception.
and that's why we set up the different EPS structures for that very reason. Because like TIA is going to have consultants that will be logging in using the system. We know that, now. And if you
3.10 that's in the districts is doing coordination, that they're doing the coordination in District 3 and District 2 and stuff like that, that they would need to access.
they have T-Pro accounts.
Huh?
They have T-Pro accounts. So
Well, they have an email address.
To answer your question, Mike, they have what's called a GDOT-AD, which means they physically work in a GDOT facility. So they will have accounts.
Patrick, was that
It's the people who have what we call external accounts, GADOT domain. They don't work on site. But for TIA, wherever Mike Dover's at, we know that his folks have, his folks, we're going to have to make a special provision for those. Does that answer your question? Or is it Adrian?
Yes and no. I mean, if I was a PM and I had a consultant working for me, I would have to take their information and enter it into this on everything.
Yes.
Correct. I'm tracking them back in.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out of our full screen mode here. So now if I wanted to go ahead and close my project, I'm going to go back into my EPS page. Now again here, it's asking me if I want to save my view changes. I'm going to say no. And now I could either go back to the project that I have open, right-click on it and choose Close, or I could just go to Actions and Close All. That's going to close all open projects. And then I want to go ahead and log out. I would just click Log Out in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And that's it. Any other questions about anything, any of the demo or application? Yes?
Start and finish dating. Were those baseline or were those just sort of computer generated?
Those are if they're not actualized, the dates that you're seeing in the start and finish columns are going to be your early dates. So they're calculated dates based on whatever logic you have built into the schedule and whatever the start of the project is or whatever the data date is.
Is that what all the users will see? So like if environmental is late, design is going to see a late PSPR date?
Once the project is rescheduled, if the dates get pushed out, that's what you'll be seeing, the calculated early dates of the schedule. Now you can put a column up there to show you the baseline dates, right? So there's a separate date column that would be the baseline start versus the baseline finish, right? So if that's what you're actually measuring against, are those baseline dates, you could choose to put a column for baseline rather than the calculated early start date. Yeah, and you can also put up a column to show variance. That'll show you the difference between the early start and the baseline start. Okay. Any other questions?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. All right, I'm going to hand it back to Bobby for our wrap-up.
Sure.
You want the stand?
Sure, thank you. All right, well, thank you, everyone. As you can see, we're excited about the capabilities and the future of where we're headed right now. You've heard a lot of good thought-out processes in terms of where we are, but we have yet to finalize a lot of it. And what we're looking for, the questions that you've asked, like Patrick, things like that, this is new to us, so we need to make sure that we fully understand you, the user, in terms of what we can do for you as well. Because going back to it, it only works if we're getting good data and people are updating on a frequency basis. So again, we want to reiterate, this presentation is really one of several to come. We also wanted to keep you informed and just let you know, kind of plant some seeds in terms of as you go through your normal routines, It's a different paradigm in terms of what we've done in the past. Typically, you have software that kind of limits things that you can do, and we've been limited by certain things, not just with Artemis, but other software programs. This has kind of opened the box in terms of what we can do. So we just need to step back and think about, before we finalize something, give it as much attention as possible. And then also questions. There is a P6 SharePoint website. What we'll try and do is we'll try and capture the questions and provide answers in there too as well. So just stay tuned for that. And I did omit the other core team members, Janitha, Teresa, Mike, and Teresa Ricks as well, and also Andy and Casey Rudd. And Derek Brown is part of the core team with the P6. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sue.
Oh, first we'll close up. Okay. Oh, no, please.
Okay.
David says I don't need an introduction, but hey, this is a great tool. It's awesome, right? It works really good. It's a tool. Janitha said it about 3 times. It's only as good as what you put into it. And on January 1st, even though this won't be in production, I can tell you that at least I expect everybody to be compliant with schedules and updating schedules. Everybody that's in the Division of Engineering right now, I know Andy's not here, put your hand up if you think I live and believe about schedules. Teresa's smiling, right? Okay. I don't have a bow tie, but I assure you on January 1, we're still working very hard in baseline schedules and making sure we make schedules. But this is a great tool. It's got tremendous adaptability, and you just saw how easily it was to negotiate and navigate and pull data. And I'm a data junkie, so I'm going to be doing all those filters and queries, so watch out. But anyway, make the best out of it. The department's put a lot, where'd Mike go? Anyway, IT and the department's put a lot into making this happen to give us the tools that we need. That's the only thing we can expect. We expect a lot out of all you guys, and you guys deliver and do a great job. And we need to be able to give you the tools to do that, and this is certainly a great tool in the toolbox to make it happen. So I'm excited about it. Give Bobby and David and everybody on the team your feedback. It's critical. All these, again, these questions are great questions, but give them the feedback so we can make it the best it can be, because we expect the best. All right, I'll turn it back over to y'all. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, it's hard to follow that, I'm not just a clicker, I'm a IT PM, so you guys will be hearing from me and seeing from me for the next couple of months. So what you can do is you go into the SharePoint site. There's going to be stuff out there, rollout schedule, FAQs. I'm actually the admin for that. So if you have any specific questions, kind of get with your POC on, just sounding it off, say, hey, what about this? Or you can submit it to your point of contact, and then we will put it up there for discussion. So basically, it's just, we want to wrap up and say, we're here to help you. We're not just going to dump the tool on you and then go, bye. Question for?
Well, the guy who could answer, Mike, just left.
I will try.
SharePoint sites, we have to shoot an email to the Solution Center to add us as a...
Oh, we added everybody.
Okay, so it's already on everybody's My Team site? I don't think so. It's not.
I'll double check on that.
Mike's developing that right now. Mike's developing that right now.
Yeah. It should, it should be. It should be. Oh, okay. If not, please send me an email.
Anyone can view it.
Everybody could view it. And then I just want to mention that, especially to the districts, please send me an email like you've attended. I'm actually the worker bee that has to put some of the minutes together and things like that. So, but we thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you attentively listening to us. Sue Johnson. Sue Y. Johnson. I'm going to get it. Thank you very much. Bye, districts. Bye. See you. Bye-bye. That's awesome. I was like, it's hard to follow that though. I'm like,
I have a couple of forgot exactly which.
Good job, Sue. I'm Daryl Van Meter, Delivery.
Nice to meet you.
I see that they didn't invite me to speak, so